You're live on YouTube now. So I guess you can start, Amanda.
Hi guys, thank you for joining. This is Essence of History. Today we're going to be talking about the anatomy of evil. I'm Amanda Armagast.
Dominic Moore.
And Dr. Bassi for Essence. Whew, anatomy of evil. Let's start with you, Dominic. Give me the most evil people you know in the history of humankind.
Oh gosh. Okay, well, I'm going to start off strong. We're going to put Adolf Hitler there, of course. And we were just talking about this a little while ago, so I'm going to say I'll put Lenin there. Put Lenin.
Vladimir Lenin?
Yes.
Okay. So what about you, Amanda?
I am going to go with Genghis Khan and Benjamin Netanyahu.
Wow, you went right.
Yeah.
Now, Dominic, let's start with you. What made you choose those two people?
Well, I mean, generally, people power, oppression, and persecution. That's kind of my criteria right there.
I mean, Adolf Hitler, I think everybody understands. The Second World War, Holocaust, and so on. Why did you choose Vladimir Lenin, though?
I just thought a lot of the policies that he sets up, and one of the reasons why, Stalin comes in later and is Stalin, is because he kind of fails his people in a lot of ways. He uses his power kind of poorly. And I think that
now, Lenin definitely set up the stage for Stalin, but Lenin by far is in a different category. Lenin is more like I think, enabler. Yes, and we will come back to that because I do want to talk about Lenin and Stalin more. But I want to know from Amanda, how did you choose those two people?
So I chose Genghis Khan because he has like I think he committed the most murder, or didn't he like commit the most military murders in history or something like that?
Military, non-military, at that time it was no social media, so you could do whatever you do and nobody would care.
He killed the most people, but then also the fact that doesn't he have the most relatives too? Like if you look at people's ancestry, a lot of people in the Asian region would be related to Genghis Khan, right?
Well, as a matter of fact, about 40 to 50% of the male people in Asia and Europe has some markers of Genghis Khan.
Yeah, to the point where there's even this like blue butt birthmark that a lot of Asian babies are born with. And that supposedly means that you are a descendant of Genghis Khan.
Yeah, Dominic, you and I, we cannot keep up. He didn't sleep with a woman twice.
So I would say
have to.
I think you cannot say sleep, rape, and so on. I don't believe he really cared much one way or another.
I would say most of them were probably the latter. I don't think a lot of women were like so enthralled and willingly sleeping with him unless it was more of a power.
It's too long ago. We don't know. We cannot reconstruct all the atrocities. But your second choice, who was that?
Well, I mean, I have access to the internet, so I can easily see what's going on currently. I can see the literal dead bodies of children every single day on my social media. And like, it's Christmas, like in Jesus's birthplace, yeah. And then I think the fact that he's using religion too to like pin so many different groups of people against each other, he's evil. He's probably the worst person on this earth right now.
Yeah. Well,
including dead people, like including the people whose bodies are still here decaying currently. I think that he can probably top them. And then I think that the biggest, like, to top off all of the evil things he's doing to people, it's also that he's using a lot of propaganda and making people be on his side, which I think makes him even more evil, because then he gets people to think that what he's doing is good.
Gotcha.
Well,
manipulative.
Let's put it in the historical perspective. Genghis Khan killed by number more people than anybody else, but he killed them in a time that human population wasn't that big. So your Genghis Khan is right up there. He killed, like, somewhere between 10 and 20% of the human that existed at that time.
Right, not just regional existence, like global.
Well, yeah, well, I'm talking about, I mean, we didn't know about the Americas and Australia, but in the countries that existed in the ancient world, he killed percentually more than anybody else in the history of human being. But how do you think the Mongolian perceive Genghis Khan? How do you think they perceive him? They revere him.
Yeah, he's probably a hero at that time.
Well, he's hero now. His hero, Genghis Khan, is hero of the Mongolian people, who united them, won against everybody else, and so on and so forth. Now,
interesting.
Yeah. Now, Netanyahu is disadvantaged. There is social media. It's 2023. Okay.
Yeah, it's not really something that is like for today to talk about, because this is something I can go on for a long time. But he's disadvantaged because of social media, yes. But then it's like he has the US backing him, who are trying to take away our social media and take away our right to information and like knowledge of what's going around.
Amanda, I see. We have to make a podcast just for that. I see that.
Yeah. But then plus, like, just to go off of what you said about how many people Genghis Khan killed, like percentage wise, if you look at how many people are dying right now in Palestine per day, it's worse than both of the world wars. Like, more people per day are dying.
Percentage.
Yeah.
Yes. But by sheer numbers, we are going to talk about some evil and dissect them and make an anatomy of how evil comes to be, because that every mistake we make in our life has been done before. Everything repeats itself, and understanding the past is the best way to understand current events and not to repeat that. You're absolutely right. We are complicit. In those babies that die under the rubble, we are complicit. But I want to dissect that, truly do anatomy of evil. How comes that all of a sudden, millions and millions get gassed and humanity tolerate that? Because it doesn't happen in vacuum. Right. I chose the anatomy of evil for a reason, because evil happens little by little, and we tolerate it little by little, and then it comes. And this is way too long to go talk about Genghis Khan. We can have a podcast just about him. Put it please on the list. We should talk about Netanyahu and current event. We should talk about that. But by sheer number, after Genghis Khan, there's a silver medal for evil in the world. Who's that? It is not Vladimir Lenin.
How old? How far? Like, how old
are
we?
This is protege, Stalin. Okay. Now, Stalin. I have been reading a lot of books in the past about him, but I'm just reading yet another book about him. It's just called Stalin.
Oh, I thought you were reading a book about Lenin.
Well, I have read many books about Lenin, Stalin, and so on, but I'm reading now a book about Stalin. And you see little by little how somewhat sociopathic person become a psychopathic person, and it moves on, and it becomes the absolute horror. Like you talked about Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler doesn't come even close to Stalin. Not even close. And
Wow.
even worse, Stalin killed mostly his own people. At least you can tell about Adolf Hitler. He was doing this for his people, killing all their, stealing, killing, and so on, to make the German people more prominent. How absurd it is, it's no question about that. But Stalin killed mostly his own people. So, and how does a person that, he was actually not even Russian, he was Georgian.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He grew up in Georgia, and his parents wanted him to become a priest. And but that wasn't for him. He actually discovered that he had a very nice voice. He would sing and chant and so on in the church and so on. But then he grew up in the time of lots of turmoil. He grew up in the time that, in the middle of the 19th century, 1850 and so on, there was this peasantry in Russia, meaning that for all practical purpose, people who had land enslaved people who did not have land. And it wasn't slave per se, but
like indentured servitude sort of thing.
Yes, it was very close to that. Okay, so what that is that at that point, there were lots of people who absolutely were disadvantaged in life. They struggled for their life, and there was a huge disparity.
When he was in charge, wasn't like most people were struggling, correct? I think that's what I listened to in my podcast, that there were more people struggling than doing okay.
Well, let's put it this way, at the beginning of his reign, everything was worse than before the revolution. You guys know about the Russian Revolution, right? There were actually not one, but multiple Russian revolution. One was, toward the 1800, where people just wanted to have right. There were lots of revolts in lots of these republics and region. They weren't republics at that point. They were region under Tsar. Yeah. But then in 1905 or 6, actually it was a long thing. Finally, people had some rights. Then the Tsar wasn't the absolute monarch anymore. And then it was in 1917, toward the end of the First World War, that then this People's Party or Communist Party came to power, and then everything went from there down the hill. Now, this is a lot of information here. We are not going to get to all of it, but we don't have to. We want to talk about how evil starts and disparity. That is what I'm getting at. Okay, there was huge disparity. People would literally starve on the street. There were these workers that they would work like Dominic. You might not like to work 40 hours. Those people. They were working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. That is, and barely enough to eat. It's said that people come from other places, work for nothing but food, so they don't starve. That is kind of disparity we are talking about. There were lots of rich people. Russia was rich, is rich still, but there was huge disparity in people who had the power, and if you would say something, you have no rights. They would do with you whatever they wanted to do. Can you imagine if you are in an environment like that you have no rights, no future, no way of expressing yourself? Can you imagine that that is a very fertile ground for extremism?
Yeah.
Now, Amanda, does that? remind you of something very current in our history right now.
Yeah, actually, you were making a lot of thoughts come into my head. I fully believe that evil is a manifestation of trauma, different types of trauma. I think that's really what creates evil.
Now, and as well, we talked about few of this, Lenin, Genghis Khan, Stalin, Hitler, and so on. We talk about all of these people. They are product of their time. If it wasn't Adolf Hitler, it would be somebody else. If it wasn't Stalin, there were plenty of Stalin there. He was just, by pure chance, probably, the one that killed the other evil.
Yeah,
and
he's
became
just
the
the Stalin that made it
dominant.
up.
Genghis Khan killed his own brother. He killed multiple of his own brothers. He killed his own children, so they cannot, put him out of power and so on. So one of the major part of evil, of the rise of evil, is extremism, and extremism is always need a fertile ground. That fertile ground is what I just described to you. Disparity, huge disparity, and people who have nothing to lose anymore. Talking about Hamas, talking about the Palestinian. These are people who are born, young people, for 20 years in an open-air prison. They have no future. They have no rights. They can be killed at any time, without them doing anything. They have nothing to lose.
And
so,
I like, before we continue, I do have one thing to say about why I said Netanyahu is evil, like compared, because obviously Hitler's.
Let that go.
No, I can't. I just can't let it go. Obviously, there's so many more evil people in the world who have done, like percentage-wise, more evil. And this is like, take this, knowing me, take this the way that I mean it. But I think that a huge difference between like Stalin, or maybe Stalin's not a good example, but like Genghis Khan and Netanyahu is back then, even in the 50s, there was this idea that certain people were better than other people. And now humans have rights. Now there's like a general consensus, like humans are equal. We all have these rights. So back then, I'm not saying that they didn't know, but it wasn't like a social accepted thing. Like now we know all humans have rights. All humans are the same. We don't have slaves. We don't have indentured servants, things like that, at least in the US. But the US is kind of backing what's going on. So that's why I'm saying, like, in relativity, with all of the knowledge he has, all of the history that we have, we can look at the past, and also we can like look at how many doctors are in Palestine, how many researchers, scientists. They're not stupid people. So I think that's what makes it like the most evil, is like knowing that you're doing something bad and then trying to convince other people.
The lack of empathy is one of the characteristic of evil, and meaning that with Netanyahu, he says that very openly, that these are animals, have nothing, they're dogs, and so on. But that is lack of empathy, and that across the board. When you look at the anatomy of evil, lack of empathy is always a big part of it. So we are talking about how the evil comes to be. Well, we talked about disparity and people who have nothing to lose, two very important characteristics, and then lack of empathy. That is the third one. Lack of what you just described. Now, this is very easy. If Netanyahu in 2023 can do what he's doing now, literally killing 10,000 babies, 5,000 infants, 2 years and younger, imagine what he would do 100 years ago. No, he has all the characteristic of evil, but no question. But that's not where I want to go. I want to talk about, truly understand how evil dominates, comes to be. So let's talk about, you said Lenin. I'm going to tell you why Lenin was very different than Stalin, okay? So when this situation happened toward the second half of the 19th century, so 1850 to 1900 in Russia, that all of a sudden peasants, they were freed. They weren't slaves anymore. That those few good things happened in that time period. So the workers start having more and more rights, and so on. But the disparity, the anger, the thing was accumulating for so long that the changes weren't good enough, not fast enough. So there was a lot of revolutionary kind of thoughts at that point, or power, revolutionary, like there were lots of fire was burning under the surface. So we talked about the disparity. We talked about people who have nothing to lose, and we talked about anger in the population, not one person's anger. Anger in the population is always as well this hate and anger. And part of that anger always translates in us versus them.
Yes.
For Adolf Hitler, it was German, Aryan against non-German. For Genghis Khan, or at that time, it was actually, it was softer. He would give a city a choice to come and come to be under the power. But if they would not, he would kill like majority of the people. He would make mountains of the skull of the people. He would cut people in pieces, boil them, and use their oil to make firebomb of people. One time, one of his generals asked Genghis Khan for more soldiers because the people in one of the cities in Iran, Yazd, were too many for his soldiers. What do you think Genghis Khan told him? Kill half of them until your soldiers are enough to control them. If after you kill half of them, your soldiers are not enough, kill another half and continue until your soldiers that I gave you are enough to control them. And so they did.
That makes me think another thing, actually, another characteristic of evil people is a more positive characteristic, which is intelligence, or they're not dumb, and they know how to manipulate, and they know how to control people. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to be so evil, because they wouldn't get people to follow along.
Anatomy of you're getting there. You see, you're coming with automatically. They are not dumb people. As a matter of fact, they are very determined. You look at Mao Zedong, Stalin, Lenin, Adolf Hitler, Mussolini. These are very disciplined, intelligent people, because if they were dumb, if you are that evil and you are dumb, you get killed long before you accumulate power. It's not, it is just a filter mechanism in the system, So, yes, they are intelligent, they are determined, they are hardworking.
Creative.
In an evil way. Creative in an evil way. Yes, they are. Okay, so we are getting there. You see, we are accumulating what to look for today if you want to see if somebody's evil or not. Okay, definitely they are not dumb. They are not lazy. Okay, so but let's move on. So people start having this first revolution, which was more like a white revolution in 1905. That workers start having rights. And then, things were getting worse and better, and boom, First World War happens. So there is always a major event that leads to evil. And for Stalin and Lenin, it was the First World War where practically destroyed the economy, the upheaval from the war itself. For Germany, it was First World War and then the so-called Weimar Republic. It is said that that the money would, if people had money, they had to buy bread right now because next day they could have afforded half of the same bread with the same money. The inflation and so on, the economy and so on, because of what happens. So it's always a major event that enables the most extremes.
Do you think
There's
that's
a saying,
because like, extremists would be willing to, a major event is an opportunity to seize power, to like seize control?
Yes.
Well, and also like after major events, normal people, like the civilians, they're all in a sense of desperation and
Yes.
or like vulnerability.
And that major event leads to higher tolerant of public for drastic measures. That is all what it is. When we are at war, we don't want to. This is how Iran, my country, now certainly the monarchy and the Shah wasn't a democratic thing, but he was more or less, in many regards, a benevolent, much more benevolent than what it came afterward. Okay, people had, they were growing, things were going the right direction and so on, but it was still lots of, disparity. Okay, and then, but what I'm getting at, it's always a major event after the Iranian Revolution. Saddam attacked Iran. It was war. And then all of a sudden, we are attacked by Saddam Hussein.
Mm-hmm.
And we couldn't afford to dissent. We couldn't afford to criticize. We had to be all united and so on.
That makes sense, because one of the things I was thinking about when we started talking about the lack of empathy is sort of how during World War II, when Japan attacked China, the rape of Nanking, for example, they convinced their soldiers, the Japanese soldiers, that the Chinese weren't, in fact, people, that they were animals to be put down. And so they didn't see them as human. And then as a reaction to all of these Japanese war crimes and then the Pearl Harbor, we create Japanese internment camps. So the American population is A-okay with that because the Japanese are animals and they're going to attack us. So it's this cycle of dehumanization and lack of empathy.
Exactly. Dehumanization. They are related, not exactly the same, but lack of empathy, dehumanization is always. Like Hamas, they're animals.
Mm-hmm.
So they're dogs. They have no right to live. It's not like, you're in war and so on. Dehumanization is always a characteristic of evil. So, you see, we are gathering this characteristic. We understand all of a sudden we can put them together. And if we hear it, somebody dehumanize any other human, doesn't matter. We know this might be a trap and where it's going to end. So, same thing happened, this First World War, drastic measures, things are going to major events. And then even at that point, actually, I really sad to say, these revolutionary voices in Russia, they weren't what we understood later on under the Communist Party and so on. Now, what is the other name for communist? Have you heard the word Bolsheviks? No? No, you haven't. So let me explain that to you. These revolutionary voices, there were lots of intellectuals, they knew something needs to happen. They were agreeing in one point. They need intellectuals get together and lead the working class, because they knew working class has been put down so long, they don't have the intellectual capacity to really lead the society.
Okay.
Well, that is what they were thinking, okay? So, and that was literally that these two groups in the Communist Party. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure if they called themselves at that point even Communist Party. It was later on they became Communist Party, but there were two groups of people. Now, Bolshevik, now it's a very well-known term we use now for, as a derogatory word for communists. Nazis use that to say, that for the communists. And it just means in Russian, it means the majority. There were another group of people called Menshevists, which is the minority.
I have heard that one.
Oh.
Wasn't the Communist Party, when it was formed, called the Party for the People, or the People's Party or something?
That's still called in everywhere. People's Party of China, People's Party of Cuba, People's Party, and so on. But now these two train of thoughts, they were separated. They said, okay, we intellectual, we have to guide working class. Okay? But the minority or Menshevists, they were thinking party has to be democratic, has to have a democratic structure. Like working class has to choose who the party members are, versus the majority, the Bolsheviks, they were thinking, no, the party chooses who belong to the party. So up, down, or bottom up, democratic, non-democratic. And in some places, actually, the minority, the Menshevists, had more power, versus in other places have the Bolshevists, or what later become the Communist Party, the more power. Guess what happened then? They start sabotaging the minority party, literally doing things and attributing it to the minority. Like they would go and kill people and say they did it. Blaming other people, doing a small evil, well, small in proportion, okay?
Yeah.
Doing small evil and then blaming the others is a major part of evil. Happens all the time. Bombing a hospital and saying Hamas did it, that is just like from the textbook of evil.
Yeah, shift that blame. Nope.
Shift that blame. Yeah, it's Hamas that is hiding among, the children and so on. It's not us. It's not really us. It's so shifting. So, but what happened? Like, why Lenin was the leader of the majority, the Bolsheviks. Okay, he enabled that. Every time Stalin did something, literally went and killed people. Stalin was Lenin's killer. Okay, so Lenin has a lot of blood on his hand, but that really fades compared to what Stalin did later. Okay, there is a saying: one man's death is what actually Stalin said. One man's death is a tragedy. A million deaths is a statistic. Okay, so that is minimal what Lenin, but Lenin encouraged him.
Yeah.
So another characteristic of evil is that you get positive feedback from small evil.
Like you mean when you commit a crime that makes you feel good?
Well, not only that, you get rewarded.
Extrinsic reward.
Lenin was very high in the hierarchy, and every time Stalin killed other party, their own people, I mean, they're revolutionaries, not even the Tsaristic or monarchists and so on. Stalin would go and sabotage, kill the other revolutionary to diminish them, and he would then get, promoted. There were lots of people who wanted to they were thinking, Stalin is crazy, he's too radical. But Lenin, every time he did that, he promoted him because it would fit his agenda. So, see, in all this evil development, there is a radical person that does evil thing, but the group of more smart people, because it fits their agenda, they tolerate that. And more than that, they promote it, you know? You know what it reminds me of? That in the Republican Party, somebody like the Donald Trump comes, everybody knows he's crazy. He comes and says crazy thing, but he fit their bill for momentarily, but then eventually he grows above them. He takes over. Exactly happened with Stalin.
Yep.
By the time Lenin said, no, this is too much, it was too late. Stalin has accumulated way too much power to be, as a matter of fact, in the last few years of Lenin's life, he was under more or less as a house arrest. He had no power anymore because Stalin made sure of that.
He's just a little puppet man.
He was another puppet man, exactly. But he recognized that Stalin is getting out of hand, but it was too late. Same thing. They tolerated Donald Trump until it fits them, but then their protege becomes the monster that they cannot control anymore. So it gets eventually out of hand, and then there is purges. You look at every evil, there are purges. Like eventually Saddam becomes so powerful, he gets rid of everybody that is close to him. Stalin did the same. Hitler did the same. Stalin did it 5 times actually. His purges. He did multiple of these purges to get rid of the people who would be a danger to his power and so on. And establishment, tolerant of the establishment of evil, but that's what I'm getting at. Now, does that remind you of, Amanda, you were describing that we are enabling somebody here in the United States, we are enabling Netanyahu. We are giving him weapons. He's killing those babies with our weapons.
Yeah, that's true. But I don't think that the United States is enabling him because that we agree with him. I genuinely do not believe, and it might just be my optimistic point of view, but I genuinely don't believe that these people that are siding with him in Congress or in the Senate, like the people that matter, I think that they are siding with his money. And I think that they just have certain things that they have to do financially with AIPAC or whatever it should be. I really don't know all the details that deep. I don't want to know either, but I don't think that they believe that there's not a genocide going on. I think that they believe that they're going to benefit more from this genocide than they will benefit from declining the genocide.
Well, in every epoch, in every history, there are people who know what's happening is wrong, yet enable it and tolerate it.
Yeah, exactly.
You're talking about anatomy of evil. Tolerance of evil is a part of it, a small evil. Evil does not happen in vacuum.
Precisely.
It happens little by little. Things get worse and worse. Then all of a sudden, the more moderate evildoers in the Communist Party were eliminated. One of the things, in one of those purges, one of the major architect of the Communist Party, Trotsky, had to go to exile, and then they went to Mexico and killed him in Mexico City in his home. So, and then when you get to the point that the revolution eats its own children, that is a term, actually. There's a revolution, and then the revolution, it happens so systematically and every time that there is a term for that. We call it the revolution eats its own children.
I kind of like that. That's it's very poetic, but also very
no,
descriptive.
it's not poetic anything about that because they eliminate more moderate crazy people. Then what stays is the crazy people.
Well, it's interesting because I guess simple it down, a lot of the times you cut out the cancer, so to speak. So it's always strange to think of the cancer getting so big it cuts out the healthy tissue.
Yes, well, it's not completely healthy, but when you get to the purge, then you know the next step is evil. Happens all the time. Okay? And then you have evil. So we go through the stages of evil, right? Disparity, people who have nothing to lose. Then dissatisfaction and turmoil, which breeds lots of crazy people. Not only Stalin, there were more than that. And all these people who are bred like that, they have one characteristic. They have borderline personality disorder. Dominic, you are even though your name says Amanda, I'm going to call you Dominic. Now, you went to med school. What is the characteristic of borderline personality disorder?
So, in fact, one of the simplest ones is they have like the solid understanding of just white and black. There's no gray. Either things are great or they are awful. You are useful or you are the devil. Like that's basically it. You just one of the two categories.
You're either with us or against us.
Precisely.
So every time you hear you're either with us or against us, every time if you don't support us, you are with Hamas. I'm not freaking with you or against you. But if I have to choose, I'll be against you. I don't care. No, but every time you hear from somebody, you're either with us or against us, that is the characteristic trait that you have to be careful for. So I'm giving you tools to understand evolution of the evil, to stay away from that, Dominic. So these people, what is the definition of borderline personality disorder in medicine? There are people borderline, we used to understand things are either the psychosis or personality disorder, depression or schizophrenia, and borderline is somewhere between. We now understand more. Borderline is still the old term for these people who have bipolar traits, but as well schizophrenia, it's schizophrenic kind of traits. One of the characteristics of that they have narcissistic, there are more than that. But one of the important things why Saddam, Hitler, Stalin, Mao, they all had this borderline disorder, they don't fully understand the consequence of their action.
Yes.
And that is why they take big risks. They do things that a normal person wouldn't do. Then we call them courageous, or people of their time, they call them courageous, brave, and so on and so forth. In truth, 100 of those people exist. 99 of them die because they do crazy things. Like Stalin would go in and start shooting everybody. There were more crazy people. He's the one who survived.
It's actually very interesting. One of the things, because commonly like borderline personality disorders, if they don't achieve like the level of success, they'll commit suicide. It's one of the biggest dangers for it. And it's never because they understand. If they survive the suicide attempt, they're always like, holy cow, I didn't think I was going to die.
So that is a characteristic that they're in a situation with turmoil, dissatisfaction, people have nothing to lose. It's a fertile ground for extremism. Certain number of these extremists that have borderline, they do go and commit atrocities and bad things, and some of them get promoted, go to the next step, they climb the ladder, and then it goes on and on and on, and then you get to a major event in the society. It can be a depression, economical depression, war, or something else, and boom, you have and a group of intellectuals that promote that because they need that extreme person. They think that is they know he's crazy, but they think they can control him. They think when it gets there, they can just unplug him. They're always wrong. Once it gets there, you cannot control that anymore. And then it goes to the next step, purges. Like, see how Trump treats the other people that are running against him, how he dehumanized them. He doesn't kill them because he cannot. But he said,
he socially
said, beat them up and I pay for your thing and so on. He's just not in an environment that he would be thriving. He's born 100 years too late. So, but now, and then it comes the major event, and it comes the purge, and then evil. So, this repeats itself again and again and again. You can go read the life story of Saddam Hussein, Mao Zedong, Khmer Rouge, the Red Khmers in Cambodia, Hirohito, Mussolini. You can go read story of every single of them. It is all the same. And then once they go that high, you can as well see they behave all the same. It is about we are doing it for the people. This is what's necessary. This is a less of an evil, and so on. Now, I hate to say that in a smaller cosmos, that happens as well in some companies. In a clique of people, this mechanism, it doesn't require like a country.
No, it happens in friend groups. It's just human. Like, if something's going to happen to humans, it's going to happen on every scale, just because it's in our blood. Like, that's just how we are. Yeah. And then the part of that is, the gaslighting, changing the blaming and so on. Especially blaming people who are doing good for your own evil and so on. Now, Amanda, we are going through a process with one of evil entities right in Twin Cities, and what they are doing, knowing good and doing the opposite is a hallmark of evil. Right.
You're not dumb enough not knowing what good and evil is. You know what good and evil is. You know that one surgery can kill people, the other surgery has 10 times less blood loss, 20 times less, 2,000% more. The other procedure had 2,000% more infection rate. You see that, you have the data, and you decide you want to be on the other side of this equation. So this evil doesn't happen and it doesn't happen rarely. It happens all the time. So you just need to open your eyes and you see it all around you, and the formula repeats itself. It is all around us.
So do you think that people are, like, for instance, Benjamin Netanyahu, do you think he was born evil, or do you think he's a product of evil?
If you go look at the picture of Stalin, you see a pretty good-looking young man. I don't believe people are born evil. I think part of it is product of their situation. Now, let me tell you something. Both of you, probably that's part of your curriculum in the school, in the K-12 school, the Lord of the Flies. Have you read that book? You want to explain what that is, Dominic, to Amanda, what that is?
Quick breakdown synopsis. A group of schoolboys ends up on an island, no adults, and they recreate their own little society over there. It's basically a paradisic island. There's plenty of food. They're not really starving for anything. And essentially they recreate a social structure where they start picking on each other. Like they could have this egalitarian utopia over there where everybody is equal, safe, they don't want for anything, but instead they construct a society where two of them and several of the others are already in a class system lower, and it gets to the point where they start killing each other.
So evil, that book tells evil is in your DNA. That is what the thing is, that in the status quo, without society, without the social norms, the status quo is evil. So does it bell a ring, Amanda?
Does it ring a bell? Yeah, it reminds me of that Stanford prison experiment where it reminds me of that Stanford prison experiment that got shut down.
Yeah, but Lord of the Ring is a fiction, right, Dominic?
I should hope so. My God.
No, it is a fiction. There is a real Lord of the Ring where 16 kids, they go.
Are you talking about Lord of the Rings or Lord of the Flies?
I'm sorry, Lord of the Flies. Lord of the Flies. Sorry, I'm just.
Yeah, I was gonna
Don't
say
be
Lord of the
very-
Rings was real.
No. Lord of the Flies. Lord of the Flies. Yeah, my mistake. Okay, so no, that is a fiction, but Lord of the Flies, there was actually a real Lord of the Flies, where 16 middle schooler, they skip the school, they go to a boat, and then they get with the current, they go to an island, and it takes almost 1.5 year, more than 1.5 year for them to get rescued. There is a real Lord of the Fly.
Jeez.
In that Lord of the Fly, they actually cooperate. In the real one, they cooperate, they are good.
Ooh.
In the real Lord of the Fly, our DNA is good. The fiction says we are not. The real Lord of the Fly, they cooperate, they help each other, they build a society that is egalitarian. It is actually pretty democratic. So the real experience shows us that the good is inherent in our DNA, and evil is a product that is forced upon us.
Mhm.
So, and that keeps me being hopeful that our DNA is good, the evil is something on top of it.
And
And
so
that
Lord,
makes evolutionary sense as well, right? We couldn't
Mhm.
become a social animal if our DNA was evil.
Yeah.
There is a
Right.
reason chimps couldn't be that populous. They couldn't have that numbers that humans have. Because chimps are truly freaking evil, you know?
yeah, well, and then it also makes sense too, because a lot of evil in my eyes, and I'm not standing up for evil people, but I think evilness, like I said, is a compilation of trauma. But I think
Mhm.
it's also a defense mechanism where you're always it starts as a defense mechanism where you're gonna bully people that bully you, or you're gonna bully people so you don't get bullied. But then it starts becoming a power thing where now you have a little bit of power, so you liked that, and you're going to keep doing it
Yeah.
and become evil. So I think that's where that prison experiment is a really good comparison to the real Lord of the Flies, because
Yeah.
the difference is those are adults, but also those are adults who were given a level of power, so
But-
then they abused it.
You'll have to
But
tell me
those are
about that experiment sometime.
I
Okay.
will tell you about it tomorrow.
well, but they put them in a prisoner situation already. They were forced into that thing. They weren't put on an island, and so
Well, they were given prisoner and guard, yes, but
status.
were they given rules to abuse people? No. Do I ever abuse my pets? No. But I am their boss.
There is
You know?
but what if your pet start biting you? Then you would.
During this podcast, Chimmy bit me 4 times. Did you see me have a reaction? No. I was actually going to talk to Charlie about that later and tell him to see if I had a reaction. My cat bit me 4 times during this podcast, and I did not bite her back or become a freak or kill
I
her.
want to see that when you bite the cat back. I really want to see that. That would be a sight. Well,
No, wait,
sorry.
sorry. One more thing. Actually, when I was younger, I used to want to show my cats that I love them, so I used to lick them.
Okay. Well, I think we are coming. I hope I gave you 2 of you at least some tools to recognize evil, recognize the stage of evil, to be able to dissect it, to understand the anatomy of evil. Because if next time somebody says my opponent is it's not even human, then you understand we are very close to this ingredient that makes evil. Okay?
Yeah.
So we could talk days and days, and I think we should talk another time about this individual like Stalin, Lenin, Mao, Adolf Hitler. We need to know the story. We need to understand them. We are not glorifying them. We are understanding them.
Yeah.
So we understand the traits that makes them, not to repeat the history, okay? But we need to talk about them.
Yeah, because
So
I think that's important. Because in all of these situations, one of the things that constantly comes up is it's just allowed to happen more or less, because all it really takes for great evil is just to permit it to happen.
Tolerate them. We tolerate them. But that's why I'm proud. Young people are on the streets. They are not tolerating babies dying in the arms of the mother and father anymore. They are not tolerating anymore. We it is, and no matter what they say about TikTok, that's why I love the TikTok. Okay, that I get my news from that, because that is still filtered, but it's less filtered than any other social media. Okay, so information, and I believe in good of people. I think Israelis themselves, if they are confronted with that, with the majority, would not stand for it. What's happening there? Okay, so an American, Amanda, I know you and I had this conversation that you had this something that some people who are close to your heart are on the other side.
No more.
I was telling you that if they really know all the information, I don't believe in their heart they're evil, and I still believe in that. Okay, I think that information, that knowledge, is the antidote to evil. Okay, so I think we have to wrap it up now.
Before we end it, who do you think are the two most evil people?
Oh,
I have so many choices.
I know it's hard. It's hard to weigh it.
Yeah. The way I measure my evil is that if they were in the same situation, they would have done more damage. Not by the sheer number they killed. Like, yes, Genghis Khan killed a lot of people, but everybody would kill anybody in that time. That was the status quo at that time. So he was evil by number, but he wasn't that far from norm. Okay? Those people who were very, very far from norm was actually the architect of evil. Not the people who were evil. Like, I think Himmler, not Adolf Hitler. Himmler was more evil than Hitler himself. I mean, I think it was part of his DNA to be evil.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I think another person that was far from norm is actually I would think the Mao Zedong was or actually I think the leader of the Khmer Rouge, the Pol Pot. Pol Pot and Himmler are my top two. Okay. And another thing that in Pol Pot, what he did, those killing fields and so on, that's a long story. We cannot go to details of that. If they were in similar situation and power situation like Hitler or like Genghis Khan, they would have done way more damage and so on. So and those are my top two contestants, not necessarily people that most of people know.
Yeah.
But if you look at the ingredient, that is evil, like a pure essence of evil.
Right. Maybe not the face, but the voice that's in the ear of the face.
Well, not by number, maybe. Well, Pol Pot was by number really huge, but yeah, but we should talk about them. We should talk about these people. Okay. Okay.
Well, thanks for watching. This was Essence of History. Today we talked about the anatomy of evil. I'm Amanda Armagost.
Dominic Moore.
And Dr. Abbasi for Essence. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Be safe.